particular words being thrown around like, oh, the light's disappearing, there's no more light, my ISO is sky high. And there's always a rule of thumb that I carry in my back pocket, which is your ISO needs to be as low as possible. Don't get me wrong, because yes, you will save image quality the lower your ISO is, but it needs to remain as high as necessary, because your ISO is obviously your tool which makes your camera either more or less sensitive to the light that it's receiving, and therefore it needs to be as high as possible in order to render a well-balanced and great or perfectly exposed image, which is also sharp and in focus. And so what I had mentioned is, I've so often heard people saying, I don't want to take the shot, it's going to be too noisy, it's not going to be great image quality because my ISO is going to be way too high. So what? Get that out of your head. I mean, way back when I started my photographic journey, or really got serious about it about 10 years ago, yes, this was an issue, because firstly, the technology wasn't souped up and tweaked as our current cameras are today in order to deal with this high noise overload when you're shooting high ISOs. And also there was not any technology around to help us reduce the amount of noise in post-processing. Well, there was, but not as easy and accessible as it is today. And what I mean by this is, I'm sure for a lot of you who have followed wildlife for some time, you would have heard of Topaz Labs. Now, I recorded a video, wrote a blog about the simplicity, but yet how powerful the Topaz Lab collection is and what they can do for your images. And I spoke of both, or all three, the gigapixel, the sharpening, and the denoise, and how simple and easy it is to use. So I'm not going to do that here today, but the purpose of this blog is to show you an image I worked in, or one of the images I worked in that particular blog, and maybe one or two other, and in the hopes of making you realize that shooting a high ISO isn't the end of the world. And there's something I'm going to say, because you have three options, and I'll say this at the end of the video. So now go and watch that Topaz Labs video if you have not yet. It is a great bit of software and very easy to use, and I can guarantee you 20 minutes of using it, you're going to understand exactly how and what to do. But go watch that video, it'll be truly helpful. But the reason or what influenced me and kind of fueled me to write this blog is, it was World Parrot Day not too long ago, and Luke had asked me, can I get some images through to him, which I then did, but it made me go way back to one of the very first species I photographed in the Pantanal, and this was a beautiful hummingbird. And on this particular day, it was bucketing down with rain. It was super dark already, late in the evening, but this bird in the rain, despite that horrible weather, it decided to buzz around and zoom around. But at this point, I was also very eager and excited, because not only my first time in the Pantanal, but also it was the very first safari I used my OMD system, my Olympus system, on a safari. So I was very eager and keen to photograph. So myself and the guests that were in the main area with me got our cameras out, we set them up, but because it was so dark, and again there I heard this comment, oh, my ISOs are going to be so high to get a shutter speed fast enough. And like I said, yes, keep your ISOs as low as necessary, but as low as possible, but as high as necessary. And we had to do this with the rain, with the dust, with it being so late in the afternoon, and with a bird that is as fast as a hummingbird. We really had to push our ISOs sky high. So on this particular image, I was very proud and happy to nail the shot, but when I did look, and Olympus isn't the best known for their kind of noise control, if I may. The images can be quite noisy because of the small sensor, but I was so happy with the result of this image after I pushed it through all the processing. But please don't get me wrong, this was by no means the raw image. Here you'll see a side by side comparing your raw on the left to the processed image, which I pushed through Topaz denoise to the right. And if you're not seeing enough detail there, because on the bigger screen, yes, you're not going to see all too much. But zooming in, image on the left, this is the raw file. Image to the right, this is the processed file, which I edited in Lightroom and then put through Topaz. And look at the results that I managed to create. Looking at the entire image again, it is well worth shooting at an ISO. I think I was at about 2,000 or 2,500 ISO at this stage. And in your latest kind of Canon, Nikon, Sony ranges, where you have your full frame mirrorless cameras and great technology, that ISO should not even be a factor. But for me, shooting a slightly older Olympus body all those years ago, that was a high ISO for a micro four thirds camera. But I knew if I did not take the shot, firstly, I wouldn't get the image. And if I didn't push my ISOs high enough, I wouldn't have got the wings of this bird sharp and in focus, because it would have just been a blur. Those wings move at a ridiculous pace. So it is vitally important to push your ISOs high enough when needed. Speaking of ISOs that are high enough when needed, we also had a sighting more recently now in the Pantanal, where we were out on the boats on safari looking for jaguar. And this one particular afternoon, we came across some jaguar on this bank. And our guide, Ricardo, got an update, and he informed us that there are many jaguar in this area and along this portion of the river at the moment, because there was a dead caiman that one of the jaguar pulled out and up into the jungle and into the forest there. And we could hear them that first afternoon. They were fighting and going at each other, but all in the thickets. We didn't see them. But I think there were 7 or 8, if I recall, jaguars. There was 2 mothers with 2 cubs each, so that was 6. And then there was, I think, another female and a male in that area. And so there were jaguar everywhere. We could hear them everywhere. We just didn't see them. A couple of days later, we went back, and it was a beautiful flat beach. Went back, and we had these jaguar on the bank, and they were all doing various different things. The one mom and her cub were under this beautiful, it looked like a cave in and amongst this vegetation. They were laying, resting under there, coming out intermittently to come and have a drink along the river and the edge, which was just such a great moment to be a part of. We had individuals like fighting with each other. The one female with cubs like did this massive loop, came and like kind of attacked and charged at another female laying relaxing on the bank. Her cub was just kind of watching, thinking, yes, what's going on here? We could hear them feeding. We didn't see this behavior at all. But we were super fortunate to have experienced what we experienced on that afternoon. The only downside to it was it wasn't far from the lodge that we were staying at, but it was very, very late in the evening. There was almost no light to work with whatsoever. So yes, that's a downside. We all as photographers wish and pray for the best light opportunities, but more often than not, the really cool stuff and that magical stuff where we got to see 6 jaguar visually, not in the same photograph, we could see 6 jaguar, 3 in a given time, if I recall, in the same scene, which that's bloody bizarre. And it was so special to be a part of it. So yes, us as photographers chase that light, and we want the best possible light. But for the most part, you don't get that. And again, on that boat that evening, I heard everyone, even in my head, I was like, Jesus, light is fading and there's nothing. But I had to remind myself that you need to still document this. You still need to. And I told my guests, guys, push up those ISO, drop your apertures, sacrifice depth of field. This is a very special thing that we're witnessing here, having all this interaction happening. And so we got our ISOs, again, skyrocketed. I think here I was probably at about 6,400 ISO. And again, for an Olympus system, that is pushing it. But we did it. All my guests, sky-high ISOs. And we thought, geez, like, yes, it's going to be noisy. There is a side-by-side comparison. This was filmed or photographed in that moment in that kind of little cave area where the mom and 2 cubs were drinking. Image on the left, that's the raw file, super noisy, not all too sharp due to the low light quality in that scene. But then the image on the right, I just did a basic edit in, a full edit in Lightroom, and then a basic edit in Topaz denoise, and that is the image quality that I managed to render on the right. So if you're comparing the raw file to the left and the fully processed image to the right, I managed to pull back so much more detail out of that scene and out of that photograph in order to create a whole beautiful scene like this, where you can see the two cubs, brother and sister, drinking, mom sitting in the cave behind them. And if I decided at that point, well, no, my ISO is going to be just too high, I'm not going to take this photograph, I would have kicked myself. I honestly would have kicked myself if I went and saw my guest images at the end of it. And obviously my role is there to encourage my guests and help, or not force them, but really just encourage them to still document this, because, and this is the thing I was getting to, those three options that you have. There's minimal to no light, or the animal's kind of not doing exactly what you wanted to do. So you as the photographer now have the options. And the first is, well, don't take the shot, then you don't have a shot at all. Or use a lower ISO in this bad light, your shutter speed's going to be nowhere, and most of your images, if not all of them, are going to be super blurred. You can't fix blur. Well, you can to an extent now with Topaz sharpening, but if it's seriously blurred, you can't fix it. But you can fix noise. So it's either no image, which that's pointless, a blurry image, which maybe you can fix but probably not, or a high ISO image, which you can then go and fix. And as the two basic examples I showed you here has proven to you, you can get away with shooting super high ISO values. So I'd highly recommend next time you're out on safari, might be with me, one of my colleagues, or by yourself back home, just photographing out in nature, and you think, oh, geez, my ISO is going to be way too high for this, I'm rather going to pack up and go home. Don't do that. Take the shot, experiment, because through that you're going to learn and probably going to be really impressed with the results at the end of the day if you are using the software available to us today. So like I'd mentioned, if you have not yet, go and watch that Topaz video. There's a whole blog about it. It's going to help you a lot. And I hope that this has encouraged you for when you're out in the field next time, that you don't pack up your gear and walk off as the sun sets, but that you actually keep photographing, because that's more often than not where the real magic happens. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your ears. And until you see me on here again next time, have a good one. And bye-bye for now.